Hey guys, tonight we begin a chilly, wide-open journey across the windswept grasslands of the Mongol Empire. You've heard the legends of fearless warriors on horseback, of empires conquered in a season. But what was it like to live there, to wake up on the steppe and start a day as an ordinary person in the 13th century? It was a little less glorious than the stories make it sound, and a lot colder. So before you get comfy and settle into bed, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I create here. And please drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. I always find it fascinating to see who's joining this sleepy journey from around the world. Now turn off the lights, switch on a soft fan if you enjoy a bit of background noise, and let's gently drift into tonight's journey. You wake up while it's still dim outside, nestled inside a low round tent, a traditional gyr made of wooden frames and thick layers of felt. There are no windows, just a smoke hole in the ceiling and a flap of fabric as a door. The space is small and dark, warmed only by a stove that burns dried animal dung. The air is thick with smoke and sun-dried wool, not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. You don't have a bed, just a straw-stuffed mattress under a heavy wool blanket. It's not soft, but it keeps the cold away. Next to you sleep 3 others and a small dog. Here, sharing warmth is normal. The nights are freezing, and body heat is a matter of survival. The first light of day is brushing across the open steppe when you step outside. The breeze is dry and cold. The air is crisp. There's nothing but scattered tents and herds of animals stretching out between the earth and sky. There's no alarm clock, but you can tell the day has begun. People are up and moving. An older man passes you, nods, and gestures toward a wooden bucket near the horse pen. You understand, fetch water. You carry the bucket toward what passes for a well, more of a wind-shielded pit. The water is icy but clean. You splash your face, instantly wide awake. There's no private bathroom, just a secluded spot behind a hill. You handle your business quickly and return to camp. Breakfast is simple: bortsog, dry fried dough, and a bowl of fermented mare's milk ayrag. It smells strong, tastes sour, and has a faint fizziness. Not like anything you've had before, but everyone here drinks it without a second thought. You sip it, trying not to grimace. It's not terrible, just unfamiliar. Meals are quick. No dining tables, no long conversations. Everyone has a bowl and a few chunks of bread, and it's off to work. Your first job, take the sheep out for their morning graze. They don't follow instructions easily, but there's a herding dog to help. You learn to whistle commands, and though you fumble at first, you slowly find your rhythm. Next task, gather dried dung to use as fuel. Cow, horse, sheep, all of it is usable once dried. You scoop it with your hands and stack it on a small sled. This is precious fuel on the steppe. There's no firewood and coal is rare. By noon, you're tired. But no one rests here. Someone's repairing a torn tent flap from last night's wind. Someone else is sewing thick clothes in preparation for winter. A woman invites you into her gyr. You sit by the fire. She hands you a bowl of hot soup, bits of meat, turnip, and rich broth. You eat quietly. It warms your belly and clears your head. In the afternoon, you're taught how to ride a horse. These Mongol horses are miniature, but incredibly tough. You mount, grip tight, and try to keep steady. It's bumpy at first, but you find your balance after a few laps around camp. The cold air bites at your cheeks, but you feel alert, alive. As the sun sets, the animals are herded back toward the tents. You help light the stove, haul in dung fuel, and wrap yourself in a thick coat. Night falls fast. The temperature drops sharply. You sit by the fire, surrounded by soft chatter and occasional lullabies sung in Mongolian. You don't understand the words, but they soothe you. You lie down in the same spot as last night. It's not luxurious, it's not even hot, but it's enough. Outside, the wind whistles through the tent seams. Inside, there's steady breathing, the quiet snort of a horse in the distance, and the hum of a camp that has lived like this for centuries. You've made it through one day, and tomorrow, you'll learn how to shoot a bow from horseback. You wake up early on the second morning, not to the sound of an alarm clock, but to the bleating of a sheep right next to your ear and someone's foot accidentally kicking your side as they get up. It's okay. Around here, no one sleeps alone, and no one minds if you brush against them while turning over in your sleep. There are no boundaries, just thick blankets, steady breathing, and the chill still sneaking through the seams of the felt tent. You step outside. The sun is just beginning to peek over the mountains. The air is colder than yesterday, and the grass is frosted white. An older man nods toward you, gesturing for you to follow him to a broad pasture. You already know, today is the day you officially learn to ride a horse. Mongolian horses are not large. They're smaller than the ones you've seen in movies, but don't let their size fool you. They're strong, tireless, and most of all, not very patient with beginners. You walk up slowly, trying to look friendly. The horse stares at you, takes a half step back, and suddenly sneezes in your face. A greeting. Step style. You're shown how to saddle the horse. There are no rubber reins or soft saddles here. Everything is made from genuine leather, coarse ropes, and wood. You place your foot in the stirrup and climb up. Not too complicated, until the horse starts moving. It doesn't run, just strolls across the flat ground. But after a few minutes, you're rocking side to side, your back aches, and your arms are sore. And now you understand, riding isn't just sitting on a horse for fun. It's a full-body workout. Mongolians ride as children, guiding horses with their knees, not reins, like in the movies. You try to keep your balance. A 10-year-old boy rides past you like the wind, grinning widely. His horse responds to his every tiny motion, a tap of the heel, a slight lean of the torso. You sigh and do your best not to fall off. The lesson continues with something even more complicated. Controlling the horse without using your hands. You're handed a slight bow, not to shoot, but to practice keeping your balance. You trot in a slow circle, trying to stand in the stirrups without falling. Sweat pours down your back despite the cold. Everyone here has fallen at least once. They don't laugh at you, but you still feel a bit embarrassed. Finally, when the sun is high, you're given a break. You sit on the grass, stretch your legs, sip from a leather water pouch, and listen to the wind sweeping across the steppe. It feels peaceful, even though your spine is throbbing. That afternoon, you eat suivan, stir-fried noodles with mutton. It's made by frying meat with onions, then adding handmade noodles in a big iron pan. It's not oily, but the flavor is rich. You clean your bowl and glance at the person next to you. You're adapting. After the meal, you're invited into the camp elder's tent. He's old with silver hair and small, sharp eyes. No one talks much. He asks if you're tired. You nod. He smiles, then points outside. He speaks slowly in the local language, and the translator repeats the words in your language. Tomorrow, archery. Just 2 words, but your heart skips a beat. Not from fear, but because you understand, riding was just the beginning. Learning to live like a nomad is mandatory, but learning to shoot, that's the real initiation. That evening, you gather dried dung for the night fire with your own hands. Your palms are a little tougher now. Your legs aren't as sore as yesterday. As you sit by the fire, sipping a warm bowl of airag, an older woman smiles at you and says, "You rode better today." You smile back. Maybe you're not so out of place anymore. But then you remember the elder's words. Tomorrow is archery day. And if today was about understanding the horse, then you'll have to learn how to become part of it tomorrow. The next morning, you wake up with sore legs from yesterday's horse riding. You stretch, pull the wool blanket a little higher, and try to savor a few more minutes of fragile morning warmth. But here, there isn't much time for laziness. Everyone's already heading outside. Another day begins, and you know you're about to learn something the Mongols consider essential. You step out of the tent. The wind is stronger today. The sky is clear, the sun low but blinding, making you squint as you look toward the horizon. A young man waves for you to come over. In his hands, a small wooden bow and a bundle of arrows tied neatly with a leather string. You swallow hard, not out of fear, but because you've never held a real weapon before, unless you count waving a TV remote like a sword as a child. The lesson begins with how to hold the bow correctly. Your teacher doesn't speak much. He simply shows you, then waits for you to mimic. You oversee his hands, how he places the string, how far he draws it back, and most importantly, how his eyes stay locked on the target. The Mongol bow is small but powerful. It's a composite reflex bow made from wood, horn, and animal sinew. Light, durable, and deadly. You try drawing the string. Even at half strength, your arm starts to tremble. He hands you an arrow, a metal tip, feathered fletching at the tail. You notch it, inhale deeply, draw. But the string snaps forward before you're ready. The arrow zips wildly, missing the target by a meter. No one laughs. The teacher nods. He places a hand on your shoulder and says calmly, "Everyone's first shot is like that." You try again. The second shot, better. At least it's headed the right way. The third hits the edge of the target. You hear a small gasp behind you. A few children are watching from a distance, clutching their tiny bows, eyes wide with curiosity. After an hour of shooting on foot, your teacher leads you to a clearing. A horse waits there. No saddle. You look at him. He just smiles and says the words that make your spine stiffen. Now we begin for real. You climb on. No stirrups, no modern reins. Your knees and whistles control the horse. Your hands grip the bow. Your back is tense. Your eyes fix on the wooden target in the distance. The horse begins to move. You sway gently with its rhythm, trying to stay balanced. You pull the string as you pass the target, but your hands fumble. The arrow flies wide, and you nearly slip from the horse. It's okay. You circle back for another try. This time, you stay calmer, and your drawing is steadier. The arrow leaves your fingers and lands just near the center of the target. Not a bullseye, but not bad. You hear a whistle behind you. It's the boy from yesterday, the one who rides like the wind. He gives you a thumbs up, then hops onto his horse and hits the bullseye with one effortless wrist twist. You laugh. You know you've got a long way to go. That afternoon, you eat with a group of young people from the camp. They joke, chat, and someone hands you a roasted mutton. They're starting to accept you. And you're starting to get used to life out here, where people, animals, weapons, and wind blend into one rhythm. By evening, you return to the tent, your arms still sore from the morning's archery. But inside, you feel happy. There's something deeply satisfying about learning a skill with your hands through effort and patience, something you hadn't felt in a long time. You lie down on the old felt mattress, pull the blanket up, and close your eyes to the sound of gentle wind outside. Tomorrow you'll leave the camp and try to live a full day as a real nomad. No guide, no teacher. Just you, your horse, and the vast grasslands ahead. The question is, the next morning no one wakes you. No one says a word. The people in the camp go about their business, leading horses to the field, gathering kindling, boiling water. But unlike the days before, no one looks your way, expecting anything or giving directions. That's when it hits you. You're on your own today, no longer a guest. You're being tested to live as one of them. Ahead of you lie the open grasslands, stretching to the horizon. Behind you, the tent you've been sleeping in. You have a horse already tied up and waiting. A leather water pouch, some dry bread, and a small knife at your belt. No map, no phone, just wind, grass, and the familiar hum of the wild. You climb onto the horse, a bit more confident now. It walks steadily, calmly, as if waiting to see what you'll do today. Your goal, gather enough dry firewood and return to camp before sunset. It sounds simple, but after just a few minutes, you realize that firewood doesn't grow here in neat piles waiting to be picked. On the steppe, wood is scarce. You must search for wind-blown branches, washed up after storms, or rotting stumps near a riverbank. And if you don't find any, you'll have to collect dried dung instead. You follow a small creek and eventually spot a cluster of wind-fallen branches. There's no cart. You tie bundles of wood with rope and sling them over either side of the horse. They're not heavy, just awkward. The horse begins to get annoyed. You hop down and lead it on foot. The sun has risen higher by now, but the wind is still cold. Your fingers start to numb and your nose turns red from the chill hitting your face. You lower your head and keep walking, one step at a time. At noon, you stop on a small hill, pull out your water pouch and take a drink. You unwrap some dry bread and jerky from yesterday. It's not tasty, it's not soft. But sitting here in the absolute stillness of the steppe, under this endless sky, it tastes peaceful. In the distance, you spot a herd of wild horses galloping past. No rider, just wind and hooves, dozens of them, running as one, strong, free. You sit and watch and realize, this is the first time in a long while you've been somewhere without traffic, noise or phone signal. And you're not bothered by that. In the afternoon, you head back by a different route. There are no road signs, no trail markers. You use the sun to guide your direction, something you never thought about in your modern life. Your horse seems to know the way better than you. Sometimes it changes course on its own. You don't stop it. You let it lead. As camp comes into view, you hear the sound of laughter in the distance. The kids are playing a game, tossing hoops onto wooden posts, topped with fake horns. One of them spots you and runs over to help. They say nothing, take the rope from your hand, and lead the horse back into camp. You smile, tired, but lighter. That evening, you sit by the fire. One by one, the people of the camp share stories. No one is forced to speak. But when it comes to your turn, a man asks softly, "How was your day?" You pause, then reply, "Not easy, but not bad." Someone chuckles. A woman adds another log to the fire. A child dozes off in her mother's lap. And you realize you might have just earned your place here. You tell yourself that you'll be ready if something strange happens tomorrow. And you don't know it yet. But something will happen tomorrow. Something no one warned you about. A side of life here that everyone eventually faces, if they stay on the steppe long enough. Anywhere without traffic, noise, or phone signal. And you're not bothered by that. In the afternoon, you head back by a different route. There are no road signs, no trail markers. You use the sun to guide your direction, something you never thought about in your modern life. Your horse seems to know the way better than you. Sometimes it changes course on its own. You don't stop it. You let it lead. As camp comes into view, you hear the sound of laughter in the distance. The kids are playing a game, tossing hoops onto wooden posts, topped with fake horns. That night, you slept more deeply than usual. Your body is completely worn out after a full day of walking under the sun and wind, hauling firewood, riding horses and tugging on ropes. No honking horns, no alarm clocks. Just the crackling of the stove fire and the whistle of wind slipping through the tent seams. But sometime past midnight, a sound jolts you awake. Not loud, just different. It's the sharp snap of canvas, like the wind has yanked hard on one side of the tent. You sit up, scanning the dark. A woman nearby is already awake. She gently pulls on a thick cloak and steps outside. You hesitate a moment, then follow. Outside, the wind has picked up fiercely. The night is pitch black, no moon, but you can feel the air whipping against your face. The guy ropes of the tents are pulled taut, a few knots already snapped loose. One corner of a neighboring tent is sagging, slanting dangerously to the side. Someone is there, wrestling to tie it back down. You're called over to help. No words are needed. Each person takes a corner. Someone runs off to get new stakes. Your fingers sting from the cold, wet rope and wind chill. But no one complains. You do what needs to be done. Later, you help a family inside their tent. Things have been knocked over in the chaos. A baby sits wide-eyed in its mother's arms, startled from sleep. You fish a dry biscuit from your coat pocket and press it into the little one's hand. They take it silently. The windstorm lasts almost an hour. Once everything settles again, everyone returns to their sleeping spots. You lie back down, limbs numb, but your mind clear with one truth. Life out here isn't always peaceful. The wind can rise without warning, and you have to be ready. The next morning, no one brings up the storm. No retelling, no discussion. Everyone gets on with the day. You help fix the leaning tent poles, then head out into the grasslands with a group. Today's lesson: how to choose a safe place to pitch camp, how to orient a tent to block the wind, where to put the stove so you're not choking on smoke. How can you anchor a gear tightly enough to survive the next gust? There are no diagrams, no blueprints, no measuring tools. Just hands, eyes, and lifetimes of experience with earth, sky, and season. You begin to realize surviving in Mongolia doesn't rely on strength, but on observation, memory, and your ability to adapt to nature. There are no superheroes here, just ordinary people, patient, resilient, and deeply attuned to the sky above them. At midday, you're invited to eat with a group of elders. They share stories of last year's windstorm when the entire camp had to disassemble in the night and relocate. One older man says quietly, "If the wind rises and you don't move in time, you're not someone who lives here. You're just someone passing through." That line stays with you. Later that afternoon, you wander the camp with no particular task. You want to walk, to look closely at where you've been living. A place stripped bare, but not empty. The more you look, the more you notice signs of life. In the roots of grass, the wheel ruts stamped into the earth. The footprints are retraced 100 times a day. You pause when you see a young boy repairing a makeshift livestock fence. He can't be older than 10, but his hands are strong and his movements are confident. You ask, "How long have you been doing this?" He shrugs, "Since I could walk." You nod. Out here, everyone starts early. There's no time to wait until you're older. That evening, as the fire crackles high, someone hands you a new coil of rope. "You'll need this tomorrow," they say, going farther out. You look at the rope, thick, coarse, still smelling faintly of another person's hands. You don't know where you'll be going or what you'll be doing, but it's clear now. You're about to leave familiar ground. And for the first time since arriving here, you'll face something that no one planned for, something no one talks about. But every long-time steppe dweller eventually comes to know. Here's the complete English translation of your section, Day 6 in the Mongol Empire. The next morning, the sky is clear, not a single cloud. Sunlight stretches low across the open steppe, casting a gentle golden hue on tent roofs and scattered tufts of grass. You eat a quick breakfast, a bowl of thin porridge and a slice of salted meat. No one talks much. The man who gave you the coil of rope yesterday walks over, nods and hands you a water skin and a small cloth pouch. Inside are a few dry biscuits, some salt pellets and a piece of dried meat. You ask, "Where am I going?" He points toward the horizon. Beyond that hill, a herding family is rebuilding their gyre. They need help. It's near a water source. You nod. No map, no detailed directions. But for people here, that's enough. So you mount your horse, gear in tow, and begin your first solo journey away from camp. The horse today is calm and sure-footed. It moves steadily, unbothered even when gusts whip across open fields. You guide it using your legs and whistle, just like you were taught. No more fumbling. Along the way, you pass several herds being driven across the plains. The people you meet only nod as you ride by and return to their tasks. No one stares, no one questions. Your presence is no longer surprising. You pause in a low-lying patch of land where sheep tracks press deep into the soft earth. In the distance, you spot a few small tents being erected. Someone is cutting grass to lay under the flooring. Someone else is tending a fire. And a woman is struggling to hold down a tent pole as the hillside wind pushes hard against her. You slow your horse, dismount, and approach, gesturing that you want to help. No long explanations needed. You're handed a long wooden pole and several lengths of rope. All morning, you work with them, driving stakes, stretching the frame, pulling thick felt over the top, tying it all down tightly with rope. Under your hands, a complete gyre slowly takes shape, sturdy, neat, and appropriately oriented to break the force of the wind. After the work, they offer you a bowl of hot milk tea. It's salty, strange at first, but it tastes precious in the cold wind with a dry throat. The woman invites you to stay for lunch. They serve soup with turnips, dried onions, and a few slices of meat. Not fancy, but warm and fragrant. You feel like you've known them for years. That afternoon, you follow a man from the camp to fetch water from a nearby stream. Along the way, he shows you how to read the landscape: claw marks from wolves, deer tracks, and grass nibbled clean by rabbits. He says, there are no signs out here. Everything's under your feet. You just have to look. You're not great at tracking, but you try to observe. A bent blade of grass, an unusually deep hoofprint, a patch of freshly dug dirt. Things start to make a bit more sense. Not much, but enough. On the way back, he stops and points toward a small cluster of trees on the plain. He says, tonight there may be heavy fog. Be careful if you return late. You nod. Here, people don't give lengthy warnings. A single sentence is enough. Before parting, they hand you a piece of bread, a pinch of salt, and a quiet blessing. Tomorrow will be gentler. You return to camp at dusk. The sun has dipped behind the low hills. The wind is lighter, but still cold. The tents are aglow with firelight, casting soft amber halos. You're invited in for dinner like one of the family. No one asks where you went or what you did. They leave a space for you at the fire. You glance around, and for the first time, the camp doesn't feel like a foreign place. But just as you're about to wash your hands, a man rushes into the tent, babbling in Mongolian. His face is tense. Everyone falls silent. Someone grabs their cloak and stands. You don't understand everything, but one thing is clear. Something has happened in the northern pasture, and it seems you'll be going too. The sun hasn't fully set. The last light of day still lingers in the sky, fading from gold to pale purple. Inside the tent, the peaceful air grows tense as a man steps in, his cloak dusty from the road, face flushed from a hard run. He babbles in Mongolian. Everyone stops eating. Some of the elders nod slowly, others rise immediately. You don't understand all the words, but their eyes tell you this is not a small matter. A man turns to you and says calmly, clearly, a pack of wolves. They've killed some sheep. We need people to go check. You stay silent, waiting. Then he adds, are you coming? No one orders you, no one pressures you, but their eyes aren't testing your bravery. They're just asking if you're ready to do your part, like anyone who lives in this land. You nod. You pull on a thick cloak, take your small knife and a bundle of torches. Night is falling fast. The wind bites colder. Mist rises from the grass. 4 of you ride out, each on a strong horse, heading north toward the grazing fields far from camp. You've never ridden this far after dark. Under the dim moonlight, the land feels unfamiliar. There are no lamps, only the glow of the sky and the steady rhythm of hooves on frozen ground. After an hour, you reach a small riverside camp. Part of the fence is down. Sheep tracks were scattered in every direction, mixed with deeper, wider prints, not livestock. One person dismounts, kneels, and touches a paw mark. He mutters something low, then turns to you and says gently, big wolves. At least 2. You swallow dryly. Not from fear, but from the sudden realization, these aren't shadowy figures from schoolbooks. They're real, they hunt, and they can appear any time. The group inspects the site. One sheep lies dead, its neck bitten, fur matted, blood black and dried. The rest were herded off earlier. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Someone lights a fire near the fence. Others begin rebuilding the posts. You're handed a torch and asked to stand guard as they work. While holding the flame, you look out into the distance. Nothing moves. But then, from very far away, a low howl. Not loud, not long, but enough to send a chill down your spine. Another man hears it too. No one panics. They check their knives, tighten their ropes, and keep going. Once the fence is restored, the group sits by the fire, chewing dry bread and sipping water. One of them tells a story, how wolves came right up to the camp a few winters ago. They didn't attack people, but killed an entire flock of sheep in one night, just from hunger and cold. You listen, not afraid, not like you thought you would be. Only aware, the nighttime steppe, though quiet and beautiful, always holds things beyond control. Late that night, the group returns to camp. You're exhausted, but push on. By the time you arrive, the tent's fire has dwindled. Everyone's asleep. You hang up your coat, sip water, and lie down. The wool blanket is scratchy, but lying down tonight feels like a gift. You close your eyes, still echoing in your mind, the sound of hoofbeats, the cold wind, and a flicker of eyes in the darkness. Something not entirely wolf. Because out here, you begin to learn. Not everything worth fearing has fangs and fur. After a long, tense night, you thought you'd get to rest a little the next morning. But the Mongols don't believe in sleeping in. As soon as the sun peeks over the hills, everyone is back in rhythm, as if nothing unusual happened. You step outside, eyes still burning from lack of sleep, and you're assigned a lighter task, watching over the lambs. It sounds easy. You imagine yourself leaning against a wooden post, watching the lambs graze, maybe munching on some bread while staring at the sky. But the reality is very different. Lambs, as you quickly discover, do not follow instructions. They scatter, bump into each other, and most impressively, get stuck in the most ridiculous places. You spend the entire morning pulling a fat lamb out of a bush, chasing 2 others away from a puddle, and keeping 3 more from diving into the drying dung pile. A boy, maybe 9 years old, walks by and chuckles at you. You smile back, ruffling his hair, trying to act like it's all under control. But behind your back, you're still trying to tug a clump of wool off your coat hem. When the last lamb finally settles to graze, you plop down on a rock with a sigh. A woman passing by hands you a hot bowl of tea and says plainly, "Lambs don't like strangers." But if you're patient, they'll remember your face. You nod silently, thinking, let's hope they don't remember I stepped on one's tail yesterday. By midday, you're given a short break. Everyone gathers to eat warm soup, chatting in soft voices. Today is one of those rare, uneventful days. No distant messages, no strong winds, nothing urgent. And to the people here, that alone makes it a good day. You spend the afternoon learning how to tie leather knots, a skill crucial for fixing saddles, packing supplies, and even reinforcing tent frames. An older man shows you each loop, each twist, how to make it tight, yet easy to undo. You fumble around with a basic piece of cord. The older man watches, then smiles kindly. You don't need to be fast. Just right. Out here, everything has to survive the wind. That line stays with you. In the evening, the camp prepares a bigger meal than usual. Someone has returned after days of herding far away. They've brought back a freshly butchered goat. Everyone pitches in to make korkhog, goat cooked with hot stones inside a sealed pot. You're invited to join the circle around the fire. People talk, chuckle, and share the food. No one raises their voice. Nothing is chaotic. Yet there's a strong sense of togetherness, as if everyone understands that a shared meal is a treasure in this vast open land. As you take your first bite of hot meat, a younger man beside you leans in and says, "Tomorrow, there will be a horse race." You turn to him, surprised. He smiles. You don't have to win. Just finish the course. You chew the meat, a mix of nervous and intrigued. You know your horse riding skills are still clumsy, but turning it down might mean missing something rare and unforgettable. As night falls and a soft breeze returns, you lie back on your now familiar wool mattress, your hands still aching slightly from all the rope work. And in your head, one line keeps repeating itself: just finish the course. The next morning, no one needed to wake you. From early on, the camp was unusually lively. Not the urgent clamor of wolves or packing up, but something joyful and buzzing. Children dashed about, adults led horses on walks, and everyone seemed to be donning cleaner cloaks and straighter hats than usual. No one shouted, but the atmosphere was unmistakable. Today was special. You sat up, still blinking off sleep. A young boy stepped inside, handing you a different coat, lighter, cleaner, and far better fitting than your current one. You asked, "For me?" He grinned. "Wear anything else and the wind might carry you off." You laughed, then slipped it on. To the east, a long open stretch of steppe had been chosen. The strongest horses were being brought out, reins tied, saddles fastened. No flags, no painted finish lines like in the movies, but everyone knew where it started and where it would end. You were given a horse, not a giant, but agile. An older man patted its neck and told you, "This one doesn't need the whip. Just don't get in its way." You climbed into the saddle. Your hands trembled a little, not out of fear, but anticipation. This was your first ride with a goal. The first was with people watching. The first real test of everything you'd learned so far. The course was a few kilometers long, with slight hills and a small stream to cross. The other riders were mostly young men, some not yet 20. They were calm, focused, no showboating, no jokes. Here, horse racing wasn't a game. It was how one measured one's breath against the wind. A call rang out to start. You leaned forward, fingers brushing the horse's mane. Then a long whistle, not a gunshot, echoed across the field, and the herd thundered forward. You held tight. Wind slapped your face, grass blurred beneath. Every gallop felt like flying inches above the earth. No one rushed ahead too fast, no jostling. Each rider held their rhythm. You focused on keeping pace with your horse, and surprisingly, it didn't resist. It ran smoothly and steadily, as if it had been waiting for this moment just as long. Halfway through, fatigue set in. Your legs ached from balancing, your back throbbed from bouncing in the saddle. But you didn't want to stop. Not to win, but because you were already more than halfway there. Crossing the stream, you spotted a boy who had stopped. His horse had slipped. You pulled your reins and turned back. He waved that he was fine. Some camp members were already running to help. You nodded, turned back toward the race, now dead last. But no one cared about ranking. When you reached the finish, marked by a cluster of stakes in the ground, people on either side gave soft claps and approving nods. No shouting, no fanfare, just the quiet recognition of those who had done what you just did. You stopped your horse and gently stroked its neck. Sweat soaked through your shirt, your arms buzzed with numbness, but an unstoppable smile crept across your face. That afternoon, there were no awards, no rankings, just an open-air meal, hot soup, grilled meat, and flatbread spread with milk butter. Everyone ate heartily, telling stories and chuckling softly. Someone asked if you'd race again next season. You shrugged, "If I'm still here." That made them laugh. Somehow, without saying it, they understood what was on your mind. As the sun set, you sat on a hill, staring off toward the path you'd ridden just hours ago. You weren't the new person anymore. At least you no longer felt like one, but inside you, something was shifting. Not just because you finished a race, but because a new question was forming. If you ever left this place, would anywhere else make you feel this vividly alive? And when you return to camp, you'll find a stranger waiting for you, holding a quiet message from far away. Something that will pull you into a journey unlike anything you've ever faced. After returning from the race, you thought you'd finally get to rest. But before you could even unsaddle your horse, you noticed something off about the camp. A stranger stood outside the main jeer. No one crowded him. No one asked questions. But it was clear his presence wasn't ordinary. His cloak was covered in road dust. His horse beside him was lean but strong, ridden hard for miles without pause. As you approached, a familiar face from the camp gave you a subtle signal. Stay put. Let them talk first. You nodded, said nothing. In the stranger's hand was a tightly bound roll of cloth, knotted with thin twine. After exchanging a few words, he handed it to the camp elder. The elder slowly unwrapped it and read, his expression growing heavier with each line. Even the children nearby, once playing, had stopped, sensing something profound in the air. A moment later, the elder waved you over. He handed you a portion of the cloth, a message written on silk, knotted at the edges, marked with unfamiliar symbols. It wasn't addressed to you, but it seemed you were the one chosen to carry it forward. "There's a camp far to the south in urgent need," he said. "We'll be sending food, medicine, and a few to travel with you." You said nothing. "You don't have to go," he added. "But if you've stayed this long, maybe this is your concern now too." You nodded. No hesitation. The next morning, you were given a sturdier horse and a supply pack. Dried food, a water skin, and basic medical items, gauze, herbs, and a small blade. A woman, about 30, calm and quiet, would travel with you, and a 13-year-old boy, your guide. The southern camp was 2 days by horseback. Not close, but not unreachable, if the weather held. You left before sunrise. No one came to see you off. No cheers, no good luck. But every person who saw you gave a silent nod. In their eyes was quiet approval. You were no longer just a guest. The land changed as you rode. The grass grew thinner. The wind shifted. The earth cracked drier underfoot. But the horse trotted steadily, and your body had learned the rhythm of long rides. The woman said nothing for the first hour. The boy only pointed now and then. Turn right, go straight. You didn't mind the silence. Out here, silence was part of the journey. By noon, you stopped beneath a small cluster of low trees. A quick meal, flatbread, a sip of water, then back on the trail. No time to linger. You could feel the urgency of the mission, though no one spoke it aloud. Along the way, the boy told you the southern camp had flooded after heavy rain. Livestock were swept away, and gers collapsed. They were short on food. Some were hurt trying to rescue animals. The message had passed through 4 camps before reaching yours. You listened and nodded. No speeches needed. Just clarity. This is why you ride. By late afternoon, the sky had begun to dim as your group crested a bare hill. The wind was colder. In the distance, a small cloud of dust, perhaps another camp. The woman raised her hand. Stop. You all dismounted. She pulled out a cloth strip from her pack, tied it to a stick, and raised it high. It was a signal, a traditional symbol of peace when approaching unfamiliar territory. From afar, someone responded. A small torch lit, waved once. You moved forward. You scanned the surroundings, trying to memorize everything. The wind's direction, hoof prints, the fading light in the west. Inside, a strange feeling stirred. Not fear, not excitement. Just the sense that you were crossing into something new. Tonight you'll sleep in a makeshift camp under the open sky. No familiar gers, no cozy fires. But maybe, just maybe, this is when you'll find out if everything you've learned is enough to carry you even further. As the sun slipped behind the hills, you and your 2 companions found a high patch of ground, less wind, a few low shrubs, just enough to shield you from the night's damp. There were no gers, no backup camp. Everything had to be built by hand. The woman carried a folded hide tarp. The boy quickly gathered dry branches from the nearby brush. You took on the fire, your first time without anyone guiding you. It took a few awkward minutes with the flint, a few misstrikes, one sting on your knuckles. But finally sparks caught on a clump of dry grass and a modest flame flickered to life. Not big, not bright, but warm enough. Enough for the 3 to sit close and eat a simple dinner. Dry bread, salted meat, and a little water. No one said much. The wind was light, not biting like the nights before. Silence surrounded you, broken only by crackling embers and a distant owl. You looked up. The stars were thick, sharp, almost close enough to fall. No city lights dulled them. Here the sky was a perfect dome. The boy was the first to fall asleep, wrapped in a blanket by the fire. The woman stayed awake, stitching a frayed saddle strap. You sat quietly, mind racing. You remembered your first night here when you couldn't tell straw from drying grass, when you sat on a horse without knowing how to hold the reins. You thought of the horse race, the nods of approval from the camp. And now you were here, miles away, on a task like someone who'd always belonged. You asked softly, "Why did you come along?" She didn't look up, just kept stitching and replied gently, "Because I was once the one waiting for help." You said nothing. No more words were needed. You lay down, tugged the blanket tight. The ground was rough with stones, but familiar. You stared at the sky, listened to the horses breathing at the edge of the makeshift camp, and felt something close to peace. Not safety, but calm. Sleep took you quietly. Before dawn, a cold gust woke you. The sky hadn't brightened yet, but a pale greenish hue hovered on the horizon. The boy was already up, rekindling the fire. The woman stepped out of the dark with a water skin and a damp cloth. "Wash your face," she said. "We reached the camp today." You nodded. It felt like stepping towards something irreversible. You packed quickly. The ashes were scattered to avoid wildfire. Gear strapped down, horses loaded. Your group moved south again, and it is faster now. No more sights to admire. Just the task ahead. After about an hour, the signs became clear. Old wheel ruts, more hoofprints, stones arranged in rows, the subtle markers of a settled camp. Soon you spotted the first ger. It was crooked, partially collapsed. Nearby, a few people sat tensely, watching your group approach. But once they recognized the woman with you, they stood. One waved, another's eyes welled up. You dismounted, legs still stiff, and then you saw something you hadn't expected on this journey. An elder lying flat beneath a tattered blanket, face pale with fever. This wasn't a story anymore. This wasn't a cultural experience. You dropped your supply pack to the ground, looked around, and you understood. Today you weren't just following along. Today you would have to act. And maybe that invisible wall between you and the real life of these nomads had thinned so much, it was finally gone. You had never cared for a sick person in the middle of a grassland before. Back where you used to live, everything was available. Clinics, pharmacies, doctors on call 24/7. But here, none of that existed. Just a pouch with a few rolls of bandages, some dried herbs, and the hands of people who were used to handling everything from beginning to end, alone. The woman who traveled with you got to work immediately. She knelt beside the older man, placed a hand on his forehead, then motioned for the boy to bring water. No stethoscope, no thermometer. But she could tell a lot just by touch and the color of his skin. She turned to you and handed you a warm, damp cloth. "Help me wipe him down." You nodded. There was no reason to say no, and no one else to take your place. You knelt, gently wiped his forehead, arms and neck. His breathing was rough, his body burning with fever, yet trembling from chills. Others quietly adjusted the tent, propping up the collapsed side, adding padding beneath him to block the wind. Someone brought a bowl of herbal broth, bitter-smelling and pale brown. You didn't know what was in it, but they said, "He'll feel better after this." You helped lift his head, and he sipped it slowly. No one spoke much. Everything was communicated through glances, gestures, and small acts you'd never noticed back home. By midday, the stronger camp members began to rebuild the cooking area. You helped the boy light a fire and prepared thin porridge for the less severely ill. An older woman sat peeling turnips with a small knife, her back curved but her hands steady. "When I was young, I lay right where that man is," she said. "No one thought I'd survive either." You looked at her. Her expression wasn't sad, just remembering. You asked quietly, "And how did you make it through?" She smiled. "Someone helped, and then it was my turn to help someone else." You nodded. That was enough. In the afternoon, you helped repair a small pen for the remaining goats that the flood hadn't swept away. The ground was still wet, the soil soft, but at least the rain had stopped. The air was colder now, but dry. Better for the sick. You heard crying in the camp for the first time. Not loud, not piercing, but enough to make people pause. An elder had passed, not the man you cared for, but a woman who had fallen ill 3 days before. No one wailed, but everyone stood still momentarily, facing her tent. A silent ritual. The boy beside you whispered, "She taught me how to ride." You placed a hand on his shoulder. You didn't know what to say, but he didn't need comforting words. He just needed someone to be there, and you understood that. By dusk, you and the woman quietly reviewed the remaining medicine. Not much left, but enough to last a few days. The camp invited you to stay the night. They built a small side shelter for you and your companions. Nothing fancy, not private, but warm. A toddler crawled over and handed you a half-eaten piece of flatbread. You laughed and accepted it. It felt like a quiet acceptance. That night, while sitting near the campfire, a man approached. His face was thin, but his eyes were clear and his voice steady. He said, "Today you did things no one asked you to do." "Thank you." You didn't know how to respond. You nodded. Then he handed you a wrist cord, hand-woven, deep red wool, Not flashy, but unmistakable, a mark of trust. Whether you stayed or left, you were now one of them. You held it in your hand, fingers tightening around the fibers, but what you didn't yet know was that by the time you awoke the next morning, a new message would arrive. And this time, it wouldn't just be a matter between camps anymore. You wake before the sun even touches the roof of the tent. No voices call you, no hoofbeats echo, just a pale blue light slipping through the seams of the fabric and the faint smell of morning smoke curling into the air. You step outside, folding your blanket neatly and tidying your corner before washing your face with cold water from a wooden gourd. The boy has been up for a while, slicing bread and spreading butter onto leaves for his little sister. The woman is boiling water, and her face is as calm as always. The camp is as it always is, quiet, deliberate, every person doing the right thing at the right time. You sit by the fire. An older woman hands you a bowl of thin morning soup, broth, slivers of onion and flour. You thank her. You're just about to sip when you hear the sound of hooves in the distance, not fast, not loud, but steady. You and a few others look up. A man rides slowly into view. He carries no weapons, no cargo, but his left arm is tied with a yellow strip of cloth, the mark of a messenger from the central steps. He stops before the main tent. No one rushes to greet him. The woman you traveled with steps forward and speaks a few quiet words in the local tongue. He nods, reaches into his tunic and hands her a small cloth pouch. She doesn't open it immediately. She walks back to the fire, sets the pouch beside it, and sits beside you as though there's no urgency. But her eyes, they're no longer entirely calm. You wait, watching her. She opens the pouch and draws out a thin piece of leather, smaller than a hand, with etched markings carved by a fine knife. The kind of message Mongols use that can't be erased by wind or rain. She studies it, then looks up. A group of strangers arrived at the western border. You frown. Strangers? She nods. Not from any known camps, not familiar traders. They seem armed, but they're not wearing any uniforms we recognize. You feel a chill creep down your spine. You're not sure if it's from the morning wind or something shifting beneath the quiet surface of the steppe. The messenger doesn't stay long. He drinks a few gulps of water, then turns his horse and rides on. This news isn't for one camp alone. It will be carried everywhere. The woman begins discussing increasing patrols with the camp leader. No alarms are raised, but the message is clear. Be ready. She turns to you and says quietly, "You don't have to be part of this if you don't want to. But if you stay, you won't be just a guest anymore." You nod without hesitation. I haven't been a guest for a long time. You help check the tent frames, tighten lashings, and reinforce the livestock fence. Life in the camp continues, but slower, quieter. There are fewer jokes and more glances toward the horizon. A different kind of silence. That afternoon, you and the boy patrol the nearby hills. From horseback, you see far. Bluish mountains to the west, thin smoke lines from distant camps, and a lone bird cutting across the sky. Nothing seems out of place, but it's that very nothingness that makes the tension worse. At night, everyone gathers by the fire. The camp leader recounts old stories of strangers passing through and how not all came with peaceful intentions. A few children listen wide-eyed. The adults just nod, as if they'd heard these tales since they were babies. You glance at the woman. She says nothing, but her hand rests lightly on the hilt of the small knife at her belt. You know tomorrow won't be like any other day. And for the first time, you wonder, if something truly does happen, will you be ready to stand with these people, not just as a helper, but as one of them? The next morning, the sky is covered in grey clouds. No rain, no wind. But the air feels heavy. People in the camp rise earlier than usual. No one speaks loudly, no one laughs. Everyone moves faster and more efficiently. No orders are needed. Everyone knows it's time to prepare. You lead your horse out of the pen, checking the saddle and bridle yourself. The boy who guided you yesterday is securing the fence, eyes fixed on the west. The woman is quietly packing up the medicine pouch and message hide into a small leather case, tucking it into her belt. Each person prepares their way, and no one shows it off. While you're gathering firewood into the kitchen tent, a lookout rides back into camp. Not panicked, but pushed to his limit. Dust-covered, face flushed from the wind. He breathes hard and babbles to the camp leader. You don't catch every word, but two things are clear. Strangers are approaching. Not many. But they're armed. The camp leader nods, then turns to the woman. Send signals to the nearby camps. If they pass peacefully, good. If not, no one finishes the sentence, but everyone understands. You stand there, firewood in your hands, heart pounding harder than usual, not from fear, but from the realization that everything familiar here, the tents, the horse's breath, the smell of the hearth, could disappear instantly if the wrong choice is made. The woman walks up to you and hands you a red cloth strip. Tie it to your left arm, she says. If something happens, they'll know you're one of us. You take it, tie it tight, and nod. No more words needed. That afternoon, you ride out with the boy and two other men to scout the outer fields. Not too far, just far enough to see before being seen. You ride slowly, steadying your breath, eyes scanning the horizon. The land here is flatter and more open. No tall trees to hide behind. If someone's coming, you'll see them, and they'll see you. After a while, you notice small dark dots on the horizon. Not many. It could be people. It could be livestock. But they're moving orderly in lines. You stop your horse. The others stop too. No one speaks. You all watch. One man pulls out a signal cloth, ties it to a stick, raises it high, and lights a thin smoke torch. The signal is sent. Now, all that's left is to wait and see how they respond. You return to camp as dusk settles in. No panic, but everyone has reins in hand, tent flaps secured, and flammables moved away from the living area. The fire still burns. Children still eat porridge, which is just quieter than usual. The adults still sit, with hands resting on knives, staffs, or rope. No one is afraid, just prepared. You sit next to the boy. He offers you half a piece of bread. If something happens tomorrow, hold tight to the saddle, okay? Horses here run fast. You laugh, slightly crooked, but accept the bread and take a bite. That night, you don't sleep deeply. Your eyes flicker open with every gust of wind. No one wakes anyone, but every noise is enough for a few people to step outside and check. You think about the morning, about the people you haven't met yet, about what might be waiting out there, and whether you'll be calm enough to keep your hands steady if things don't go as hoped. Duoi jai labandichtieng an kua joan ban kung kap, giu nguyen fong kach ke chuyen hen hang, giao hin an van hip ke tram ju. You woke up before the sky had turned blue. In the camp, there were no neighs of horses, no voices calling one another for the morning herding. Every sound seemed muffled beneath a thick, heavy layer of air. You put on your cloak and stepped outside. The morning was dim, with a soft wind blowing from the west, the same direction you saw those dark dots yesterday. The camp was already awake. Each person stood at their post. No chaos, no rush. Just a quiet order, like a song rehearsed so many times it no longer needed a conductor. You were assigned to stand at the camp's main entrance beside two older men and a young girl holding a long staff wrapped in white cloth, a symbol of peace, if needed. The boy you knew was positioned at the back, guarding the horses near the most enormous tent, in case a quick evacuation was necessary. The woman who had traveled with you stayed near the medical tent, quietly organizing supplies, her eyes never leaving the horizon. Then you saw them. The silhouettes emerged slowly through the morning mist. 6 riders, long cloaks, hoods up, none wearing the clothing of any known local tribe. Their horses were tall, muscular, not the usual nomadic stock. Each man bore weapons, not hidden but not brandished either. The whole camp held its breath. One of the strangers raised his hand in greeting. Not high, not fast, just a soft wave, an unspoken hello. The elder beside you stepped forward and raised the white staff. The girl next to him shouted a short phrase in the local dialect, an old ritual for greeting outsiders. The strangers stopped about 50 paces from the camp. The lead rider dismounted and removed his hood. A tanned man in his 30s, deep eyes, calm expression. He spoke in Mongolian, halting but clear. "We ask for shelter for one night. We mean no trouble." A brief silence. Then the elder of the camp stepped forward and nodded. "One night. You and 2 others may enter. The remaining 3 stay outside." You were surprised. However, caution and hospitality always walked hand in hand among the Mongols, as long as the rules were clear. The 3 others stayed on the camp's edge, setting up a temporary shelter. The 3 permitted inside were brought to the guest area. They weren't disarmed, but weren't allowed to wander unattended either. You were tasked with bringing them warm water and a few flatbread pieces. The stranger accepted them with a quiet thank you. He looked at you. "You're not from here, are you?" You nodded and smiled. Almost local now. He gave a faint smile, but his eyes were still watchful, as though weighing something behind your answer. Later, the woman you knew called you aside, leading you to the rear edge of camp. "Something's off," she said. "They're horses. The dust on their legs is damp." You frowned. "Which means they came through rain, but we haven't heard of any storms nearby. No camp reports it." You understood. They had arrived from a direction. No one controlled. The camp went on that night as usual. Meals, stories, the fire, the wind. But something had changed. No one slept deeply. Eyes stayed open longer. Hands stayed closer to the knives and rope. You lay on your wool blanket, listening to the fire crackle, and wondered, that man, what does he want? And will they still be here when morning comes? You wake to a soft ray of sunlight slipping through the tent flap. Rare, but today the sky is clear. No grey clouds, no morning mist. Just that gentle golden light draped every grass blade and every dew-kissed roof. But a sunny sky doesn't mean peace on tense days like this. You dress, tighten your leather laces, and step outside. The camp is quiet. No shouting, no clashes. The strangers are still in their temporary shelter. One is watering the horses. 2 others sit by a fire, whittling wood. The man with the deep eyes from yesterday hasn't appeared. You find the woman you've journeyed with. She's speaking with the camp elder and a rider from a neighboring settlement who has just arrived. They're exchanging words quickly, in low voices. When she sees you, she gestures for you to come over. "We need someone to approach them," she says. "Not to interrogate. Just to see what they really want." You stay silent for a moment, then nod. A few minutes later, you're handed a small tray with milk tea, bread, and a warm water flask. A simple gesture and a quiet test. You make your way toward the visitor's tent. The guards have already been informed. No one stops you. When you arrive, one of the 3 men cleans his sword with a cloth. He glances at you, nods slightly, and says nothing. You set the tray down, pour the tea, and sit respectfully, as tradition dictates when hosting a guest. A moment later, the leading man steps out. "Good morning," he says, in slightly accented local dialect. You respond, "The tea is hotter than usual today." He sits, lifts the cup, blows gently and sips. Not hurried, not cold. Then, after a pause, he says, "You're not from here." You nod. "Number. But I've lived here long enough to know how to keep a fire alive when the wind picks up." He gives the faintest smirk. A smile, perhaps just a reflex. "We need to pass through the south," he says. "No trouble intended. Just avoiding snow in the hills. Going around would cost us 3 more days." You nod. "The elder needs to be certain of that. And you're the one they sent to feel us out." You answer honestly, "No. I'm just here with the tea." He chuckles. This time, a real laugh. Later, you report every word and gesture. The woman listens closely, then murmurs, "They're right. Taking the long way adds 3 days. But what they didn't say is what they're carrying." You ask, "Should we let them through?" She replies, "If we refuse, they'll find another way. But if we accept, it means we trust them." You know well that trust isn't just a word in the steppe. It keeps people alive through winter. and can doom a whole camp if placed in the wrong hands. The elder decides to let them pass, but not alone. Each group of 3 is to be accompanied by a local, watching from a distance, unarmed, serving as a guide. A discreet way to monitor them, without offending pride. You're not surprised when you're chosen as one of the 3. You pack lightly, some dry bread, water, a dagger, and a coil of rope. The woman ties a red cloth to your horse's saddle, just like last time, but this time she knots it tighter. Don't do anything, she says, just observe. And remember everything. You nod. When you leave the camp with the strangers, no one waves, just a few steady gazes following you. One child raises a hand, not from joy, but because you once gave him a scrap of bread the week before. The group moves slowly. The horses are unbound, but the distance between each rider is perfectly measured. You ride to the left, a few paces behind the leader. No one speaks. The wind begins to pick up, brushing across the open plain. And when you glance sideways, you notice something hanging from the center rider's saddle. A cloth stained with old blood. Not an accidental smear, but a deliberate mark, preserved. You know, this is not just a group seeking a shortcut. They're carrying something that could change everything you thought you knew about this land. The group continued south, following a winding path along low hills where the earth was firmer and less rocky. The sun had risen fully, yet no one spoke. The only sounds were the clatter of saddles, hooves brushing against the dirt, and the wind whispering through the grass. You rode on the left, occasionally glancing at the rider in the middle, the man who smiled at you over tea that morning. The old blood-stained cloth still peeked from the saddlebag behind him, like a red ink blot on white parchment. No one tried to hide it, but no one mentioned it either. And you knew, here, the things left unsaid are often the ones that matter most. Around midday, the group stopped briefly by a low ridge of rocks. You were allowed to dismount, sip some water, and chew a few pieces of dry bread. The strangers were in no rush. They passed around a small flask of liquor, exchanged quiet laughs, but always kept one hand near their weapons. A kind of relaxation with invisible boundaries. You sat near the youngest among them, a face still carrying softness, eyes sharp, but not yet hard. He glanced at you, then asked casually, like chatting to pass the time, "Ever been in a fight?" You chuckled, then answered honestly, "I've fought goat meat. It's pretty tough." He laughed lowly, shaking his head, not mocking, just amused. It didn't feel like a threat. It was more like he was testing what kind of person you were. You asked in return, "And you?" He shrugged, then pointed to a faint scar on his wrist. Sometimes you have to hold on to what no one wants to let go. You didn't reply, but you remembered that line. By late afternoon, the group crossed a shallow stream, icy cold, flowing gently but surprisingly deep at the center. You nearly slipped, unsteady as your horse stepped onto the slick rocks. One of the riders turned back and grabbed your reins. He didn't speak, just nodded his chin. "Keep moving." You realized something then. They didn't dislike you. They didn't fear you either. They just didn't consider you one of them. At least not yet. Before nightfall, the group set up a small roadside camp. You helped light the fire, boil water, and stretch the windbreak tarp. No one asked you to, but it was clear. No one would do it for you if you didn't do it. You shared a bowl of hot tea with the eldest man. He sat on a stone, his gaze distant. Then he asked, "What do you think we are?" You paused, thought a moment, and answered slowly, "I don't think you're just passing through for convenience. And I think if you meant harm, you wouldn't have stopped for tea." He nodded, neither confirming nor denying. Then he pulled a small folded piece of leather from his coat pocket. Thin, creased 3 times. He didn't open it, just rolled it gently between his fingers. "There are things we carry," he said, "not heavy, but if opened at the wrong time, could set this whole land on fire." You looked at him. The wind lifted the edge of your cloak. You didn't ask for anything more. You understood. That night, everyone slept close to the fire. You lay slightly on the edge, eyes watching the horses as they dozed standing. You noticed a tightly bound scroll beneath the saddle on one of their backs. You closed your eyes, trying to push away the thoughts swirling in your head. What kind of map? For whom? And why take such a long, winding road? The woman you traveled with would appear on a nearby hill by morning. Not hurried, not surprised. But she would bring something. Something that would change the course of the entire journey. You wake up while the sun is still low, its light just starting to paint the eastern edge of the sky pink. Last night's fire has gone out, leaving only a bed of warm ash and a few glowing embers clinging to half-burned sticks. No one calls you, but the group is nearly ready to move. One man tightens the leather straps on his pack. Another slings a bow across his back, gently checking the tension of each string before securing it again. No one speaks. There's no need. In this group, every movement comes from habit. No rush, no flair, just precision. You lead your horse over, tightening the saddle straps. You hear a soft sound from the left hillside as you reach for the reins. It's not sudden, not urgent, just the steady rhythm of hooves. You and the others turn at the same time. At the hill's crest, a lone rider appears, holding up a white cloth, symbol of a known ally, no threat intended. You recognize the familiar figure in the morning light. It's her, the woman who's been your companion since the early days. Same thick cloak, same calm eyes, still never wasting a word. She rides down to the camp and stops in front of you. There's been a change, she says. Someone further back wants to meet this group. No delay. The strangers hear this without surprise. They exchange glances, and the eldest among them nods. We'll go, he says, but only two people meet. One of ours, one of yours. She turns to you, doesn't ask, just looks. You understand. You nod. The meeting doesn't happen at the original camp, nor anywhere near a settlement. You, she, and one of their leaders, the deep-eyed man with the brown leather bracer, ride southwest to a low valley, where a stream trickles through and two large stones shield against the wind. Someone is already waiting there. A chieftain from another camp. You haven't met him before, but his weathered face, strong frame, and neatly kept beard speak of someone long used to navigating uncertain moments. The conversation is in the local tongue. You catch a few words: intelligence, route, unofficial, reroute. These fragments were enough to gather this. The strangers weren't merely avoiding snow. They carry a message, and they don't want anyone to know they passed through here. The chieftain reads the leather slip handed over by the strangers, then falls silent for a long time. At last he turns to your companion and speaks slowly. This message will move forward, but no one else travels with them. You feel a jolt. That means this is the end of your road with them. You won't be going further. The stranger looks at you, then says quietly, "You're not a guide, but you knew when to stay quiet. Thank you." You nod. That afternoon, you and the woman ride back to the original camp. She says nothing on the way, and you find you have no questions. Only when you pause under a tree for water does she speak, voice low. There are things we don't need to know, but once you've seen them, you need to understand which side you're on. You look at her, then out to the horizon, where the strangers are now fading into distant dots. You don't know exactly what they carry or what they'll leave behind. But you know one thing. From today on, life on this steppe will never be quite the same. You and she return to camp in the late afternoon as the sun casts long shadows across the steppe. No one comes out to greet you. No questions are asked. On the steppe, returning is not an event. It's simply the natural follow-up to having once left. You dismount, tie the reins to a post, and unfasten your saddlebag. Everything is as it was. Smoke rising from the kitchen tent, children running circles, the scent of dried dung smoke and stewed meat drifting on the breeze. But inside you, something has shifted. Maybe no one notices. But you know you've traveled farther, not in distance, but in how you now see this place. The camp elder nods at you as you pass. He doesn't ask anything, just place a hand on your shoulder, a quiet confirmation that you've done what must be done. That evening, you eat with the elders. Their talk is light, whether winter will come early or late, whether the horses have fattened enough, Who's getting married next week? No one mentions the outsiders. No one speaks of the message passed from hand to hand. Here, essential things are often kept quiet, not out of fear, but out of respect. After dinner, you sit alone on a slight rise behind the camp. The sky is clear, the moon full, and the grass whispers in the wind. You think about the stranger's eyes, about her words. You have to understand which side you're on. You haven't picked a side, but out here, it seems that just by not standing still, sooner or later, you will. Night deepens. You return to your tent, pull the blanket up close, and try to coax sleep. But your mind keeps replaying images. The blood-stained cloth, the map strapped behind a saddle, words spoken with no beginning or end. You realize, from now on, anyone you meet, a lone rider, a traveler asking for water, or a group staying just one night, might be part of something far larger than you imagined. You're no longer just trying out life in this tribe. You're now part of the current that flows through this land. And the water here, even when it looks calm, always runs deep beneath the surface. Tomorrow morning, you'll rise as usual, to milk the mares, to reforge a horseshoe, to straighten a fence post blown sideways in the wind. But one thing is sure, your eyes will always drift toward the horizon. Because out here, you never know. Those you thought were gone might one day return. A few days pass, you slip back into the rhythm of camp life, leading horses, gathering firewood, mending straps, chopping turnips. Every morning, you rise early, wash your face with cold water, sip a bowl of weak-salted tea, and begin the day like everyone else. No more urgent signals, no strangers, no more long rides beyond known boundaries. And you begin to understand, sometimes the most unsettling thing isn't the chaos, but the silence that follows it. The woman who once traveled with you now speaks even less. Not because she's hiding anything, but because some things are best left for the wind to carry away in this land. She still helps you adjust saddle straps and teaches you how to lash bundles so they don't fly loose when the horse gallops. Everything continues, steady as ever. You're assigned to the camp hearth for a few days, lighter work, but a test of patience. Because in a Mongolian camp, the hearth is more than just a place to cook. It's the center, where people gather when it's cold, where conversations spark each evening, and where no one can be careless. You boil water, slice onions, tend the flame, and you must keep it steady, not too smoky, not too weak. An older woman watches you from the tent's corner and quietly says, "If the smoke rises thick, it's because you're rushing." You glance up, ready to laugh, but realize she's not joking. And she's right. You've been blowing too hard, trying to force the fire. You ease off, slow your breath, and for the first time, the flames burn clean and quiet. After the coals have dimmed that night, you sit alone by the embers, feeling the pace of life settle, slower, calmer, and somehow more breathable. The older man of the camp joins you and nods. "Good fire today." You smile. "I think the wood was better." He shakes his head. The wood is always the same. What matters is the hand that burns it. You carry that sentence with you into the night. The next morning, you go up into the hills with a small group to gather medicinal herbs. The steppe has entered late autumn, golden leaves, brittle grass, and a wind that carries the scent of coming frost. You realize you've been here long enough to witness the seasons change. The herbs don't grow in clumps, but are scattered in low, hidden patches. You must crouch, move slowly, and distinguish between zamba for stomach pain and chagachir for dressing wounds. Someone laughs and teases. Pick the wrong one, and the whole camp will dream the same dream. You laugh too, but your hands grow more careful after that. On the way back, you ask the man beside you, "What do people do here when there are no wolves, no strangers, no trouble?" He shrugs. They prepare for the next time. You say nothing. The answer is too simple and accurate. Here, no one expects peace to last. They only receive it, like a rare good meal, like a night without wind, and then keep preparing for the moment when everything turns again. That night, wrapped in your thick wool blanket, listening to the wind slip through tent seams, Your mind drifts to the stranger with the leather note, to the young man who asked if you'd ever swung a blade, and to your own eyes, once gazing toward the distant horizon. Everything feels quiet. But beneath the dry grass, unseen currents still swirl. And you know, it won't be long before something begins to move again. The first gust of wind came on what seemed like an ordinary morning. You were chopping dried meat for lunch when the boy who tended the horses ran past the kitchen, shouting, not loud but clear, "Winds changed, west wind." Immediately the camp moved like oiled gears. No panic, no chaos. But everything quickened. Tents were secured, cargo ropes retightened, dry straw moved away from the fire pits. You stood up, dusted off your hands and looked around, still unsure why a western wind would shift the whole camp's rhythm. An older woman by the tent, rinsing rice, spoke softly like telling a folk tale. The west wind often brings uninvited guests. You were sent to the hillock behind the camp, where a small flagpole stood, more for sensing wind than defense. The boy showed you how to place a feather on your palm, close your eyes, and wait. If it floats sideways, he said, it's nothing. But if it flies straight, best go report. You tried. The feather swirled, circled, then fell to the ground. Wind's not sure yet, he said. We've got time. You nodded, eyes scanning the distance, nothing but grass. But you knew, what's most dangerous is often the waiting, without knowing why. That afternoon, riders appeared on the horizon. Not strangers, it was the eastern camp bringing news. The man leading them, an old friend of your camp leader, dismounted, clapped you on the shoulder and whispered, "They're coming back. 3 days, maybe less." You didn't have to ask who they were. You'd suspected it the moment the wind shifted. That evening, the camp held a quiet meeting. No fire circle, no raised voices. Just hushed talks and one question. Move the camp or stay and prepare? They chose the latter, not because they wanted to fight, but because they refused to run before knowing what was approaching. You sat in the circle, saying nothing. But when the camp leader asked, who will carry the news to the next camp? You raised your hand. No hesitation. At dawn, you left with an older man. Your horse carried a message written on cloth and a bag of dried food. The path wasn't long but exposed. No trees, no cover, nothing but wind. On the way, he told you about a time he encountered thieves disguised as traders. They didn't do anything, he said. Just asked for directions, asked for water. But when they left, we'd lost 3 horses and 2 leather bags. You asked, so what did you do? He smiled. Next time, I kept the water to myself. You didn't laugh, but you understood. By noon, you reached the neighboring camp. They nodded at your message and said, thanks. We've seen strange tracks the past 3 days. You stayed for a meal and a rest. Their tea was stronger here, with a bite of ginger. No one asked much, but you could feel it. They were ready. As you prepared to leave, a young man from the camp handed you a red wool string, hand-woven, meant to tie around your wrist. Won't stop the wind, he said, but it'll help us find you if you get lost. You tucked it into your pouch, didn't wear it, but you knew someday you would. On the ride back, night fell faster. The wind carried a sharper chill. You pressed the horse forward, not in panic, but with purpose. You weren't afraid of the dark. You just wanted to return in time before the people you now called your camp entered the night with too many unanswered questions. You returned to camp at dusk. The last light of day clung to the horizon like a thread slowly pulled away, retreating into a deep violet sky. The western wind still blew, colder than the day before. It didn't howl, but bit through your coat enough to make you shiver, even with the collar pulled tight. As you rode in, no one cheered, no hands clapped. But at the edge of the main tent, you saw her, the woman you knew, arms folded, eyes fixed in your direction. When you stopped your horse, she nodded. No, are you all right? Logically, no, what happened? Зрение, потому что она знала, что вы скажете, когда будете готовы. You dismounted, handed over the cloth bundle with the neighboring camp's message, and went to rinse your face in icy water. Your hands trembled. not from fear, but from the tension of the long ride settling into your muscles. That night, people sat closer than usual around the fires. No one said why, but everyone understood. No one wants to sleep alone when the wind carries the scent of ash. A child curled in her grandmother's lap, nibbling a piece of dry bread, whispered, "Will something happen tomorrow?" The grandmother stroked her hair and murmured, "Whatever happens belongs to the sky. We just make sure there's enough firewood, full water skins and steady flames." You heard it from your place by the fire, and something in your chest softened. The camp leader moved from tent to tent, checking knots, wind flaps, and food stock. Everyone was told, if you see a red flag on the northern hill at dawn, pack up and prepare to leave. If not, stay and carry on. No threats, no pressure, just clarity. The woman handed you a small pouch, its string already tied. Inside, bandages, flint, and a chunk of dry bread. "Not for eating," she said, "just to remind you. There's still work to be done." You said nothing. You took it. Before sleep, you sat at the edge of camp for a while, watching the northern hill. The night was pitch dark, only a sliver of moon and weak stars. Still you stared, as if you might see the future rising over that slope. You weren't a warrior. You didn't carry a sword. But you weren't just a bystander anymore. You'd delivered news, raised tents, carried the sick, and once chose to stay when you could leave. You were beginning to understand. Surviving here wasn't about strength. It was about daily choices, between staying or going, silence or speaking, trust or doubt. When you finally crawled into your tent and wrapped yourself in your thick blanket, you heard footsteps. Not rushed, not panicked, but steady. You knew it was the night watch, someone guarding the sleep of the camp so that tomorrow, whatever it may bring, someone would still wake, light the fire, boil water, and say to a child, "Looks like the weather isn't too bad today." And what would tomorrow bring? You didn't know. You only knew. You would be here to see it. You wake earlier than usual, not because anyone roused you, but because something in your chest feels different. It is as if your body already knows this morning is unlike the others. Outside the tent, the sky is pale grey, silent. No roosters call, no horses shifting, not even the familiar crackle of the kitchen fire. It's as if the world is waiting for someone else to speak first. You step out, wrap your cloak tighter, and pull the collar up. The wind comes from the north, stronger than yesterday, colder, and it carries a faint, acrid scent. Complex to tell if it's damp firewood smouldering or something more distant. You glance up toward the northern hill. The flagpole is bare. No red cloth, no signal to abandon camp. So everyone has decided to stay. Not long after, others begin to stir. Quietly, no rush, but everyone wears an extra layer. Everyone holds eye contact a second longer when saying good morning. The woman you know hands you a small cloth pouch. You don't need to open it. You already know what's inside. Bandages, a small dagger, a soft coil of rope. The things no one wants to use, but everyone needs to have. "It's nothing," she says, "just being prepared." You nod. You've heard those words before, but today they weigh heavier. By mid-morning, a lookout returns from the northern post. His face is tight, but not panicked. "They're here," he says. "Not many, 11. But they've brought something." You climb the hill with a group of others. From a distance, you see them. This time, not 6, 11 riders. Slow, deliberate. They don't raise weapons. But they carry no goods either, no signs of trade. One of them holds a tall pole, something tied to it, perhaps a symbol or message. You squint. Don't recognize it right away. But the woman beside you murmurs, "That's a banner from a southern clan, one that was once exiled." You turn to her. Why would they come back now? She shakes her head. Maybe they believe it's time. The camp chief doesn't rush out to meet them. He sits inside the main tent, fingers tapping lightly on the table, lost in thought. You sit by the fire, tasked with heating water, but your hands are distracted, eyes fixed outside, where the strangers draw closer. The woman looks over at you, her voice low. What if they want to stay? You don't answer at first. Then, after a moment, you say, if they were once part of this land, maybe now they just want a place to begin again. She says nothing, but nods. By midday, the riders stop at the edge of camp. They do not enter, they wait. The camp chief steps out with a small group. No weapons, but every stride firm. You're not part of that group. You stay behind, tending the fire, watching the children, tightening the fence lines. But you don't feel left behind. You understand. Keeping the warmth alive is its kind of defense. By late afternoon, the strangers haven't left. But they haven't moved forward either. No one knows what tonight will bring. You sit by the flames, the soft rope in your hand. You run your fingers over its coils. Something in the motion steadies your thoughts. And you wonder, maybe the stranger is not someone else. Perhaps the stranger is an old version of yourself. Returning. Knocking. Hoping to be forgiven. The evening air turns crisp as the day fades. The wind flows steadily, not harsh, but carrying a strange scent. Not quite smoke or dry grass, like the smell of unfinished conversations. You're asked to bring tea to the outer tents where visitors stay. They haven't officially entered the camp. You carry a small wooden tray, 3 bowls of milk tea, a few crisp flatbreads. No one told you to do this, but the camp chief said, a soft step speaks more than a loud word. You approach, bow slightly, and place the tray not too close. The older man of the group meets your gaze, nods once, and lifts a bowl of tea. The younger one, the one with eyes like fresh forged steel, speaks instead. This time you didn't bring a knife. You reply evenly, this time I thought you wouldn't need one. He doesn't smile, but he doesn't answer either. And that's enough. When you return, the woman is waiting by the fire. They still haven't made a clear request, she says. Just said they want to stay a few days, wait for more of their people. You ask, what people? She shrugs. No idea, but no one ever asks for shelter just to rest. You understand. In these parts, no one moves without a reason. And if there is a reason, it always reveals itself. That night, the whole camp shares a single pot of stew. No one mentions the visitors again. Children still laugh. The adults untangle horsehair ropes, patch saddles, and polish steel shoes. But the quiet is different tonight. Not tense, just waiting. You sit with the woman by the fire. Your hands snap dry twigs. She sorts a cloth medical pouch, bandages, herbs, tools. Each movement is slow, deliberate, and nothing is rushed or missed. You whisper, what do you think they really want? She pauses, then answers without looking at you. Maybe land. Maybe people. Maybe a memory they forgot losing. You glance toward the foreign tents. Maybe she's right. Perhaps they didn't bring danger. They got a longing they couldn't name, or a broken trust trying to find its way home, though no one dares to reach for it. You're assigned the first night watch, sunset to moonrise. You circle the camp with a small torch. Not to search for anything, to avoid getting lost in the dark yourself. You spot the familiar boy curled near the horse pen on the path, fast asleep. You gently lay your cloak over him. Don't wake him. Then keep moving. At the camp's edge, 2 visitors are quietly talking by their fire. The flames paint their faces gold. One of them draws in the dirt. Maybe a map. Maybe a game. Maybe a plan. You don't move closer, not from fear, but because you understand, some things are meant to open themselves when they're ready. You circle west, toward the livestock fence, and there, something odd. 1 horse, unhitched, just one. No new footprints, no sound, just a loosened knot, and a horse now facing the camp. You pat its flank gently, retie the rope, whisper, it's all right. Everything's still here. But deep down, you know, sometimes it only takes one small step like that to mark a shift. Tomorrow may be the day they step fully inside. Or it may be the last day this camp feels like it's only yours. The next morning, you wake earlier than usual. Not because of the wind, not because of the horses, simply because something inside you refuses to stay asleep, like a quiet sense that something is about to begin, or quietly end. You step out of your tent and scan the camp. All is still, no bustle, no children's laughter, only the soft crackle of morning fire and the whisper of wind through the grass. You glance toward the temporary encampment of the strangers, and that's when you see it. The old flag has been taken down. In its place hangs a strip of grey fabric stretched across one of their tents. Not a declaration or surrender. A signal, we've decided to stay. No one rides into camp, no drums. They begin to pitch more tents, light fires, and draw water from the shared well, as if they've belonged here all along. The people of your camp do not drive them away, nor do they welcome them. Instead, their glances linger longer. Their greetings are shorter, and the space between people is kept with intentional care. You're summoned to the camp leader's tent. Inside are a few seated elders, the woman at your side, and the camp chief himself. He gestures to a rough map drawn on stretched goat leather before him. They're not leaving, he says. Now we must think about living with them. You nod, not surprised, but you know this is bigger than it seems. You'll oversee the area near their tents, he continues. Not to guard, to listen. You pause, then nod. To listen, a task that sounds simple, but here it's the one thing that can prevent a slow, silent unraveling. You head to the thin strip of land between the two camps by midday. Children are still playing games in the grass, tossing, chasing, tumbling, blissfully unaware of what the adults are wrestling with. A small child from the stranger's side runs up to you, holding out a smooth, shiny brown stone, polished by time and thumb. Will you keep it? They ask. You smile, take it gently, and reply, just borrowing it, until you want it back. They nod and run off, shouting something in a language you don't yet know. But the sound of it carries no malice, only laughter. As the sun lowers, two strangers approach the camp leader. They bring a leather pouch of dried herbs and a few spools of thread. Not as a gift, but as a contribution, the Mongolian way of offering peace when the bond is still fragile. From a distance, you watch the campfires between both tent groups rising together. No more sharp divide like yesterday, just the blending warmth of shared smoke. And you begin to understand. Conflict doesn't always arrive with weapons. Sometimes it comes when no one dares to speak first. And likewise, peace might begin with a dried cloth, a child's gift of stone, or simply your quiet presence in the right place at the right time. That night, you're on watch again, but not circling your side of the camp. This time, you walk the path between where they and us used to be. You stroll, torch low, and your heart is calmer than before. Not because everything is settled, but because perhaps for the first time, you see it clearly. You're not just living in the Mongolian steppe. You're living in a space between two worlds, and you are the slender bridge holding them together. The next morning, you wake to children laughing, a sound that felt like a luxury just days ago. You sit up, pull your blanket aside, and step outside. The early wind is no longer sharp, just a gentle chill that seeps into your collar, enough to remind you you're alive. The sky is clear, and before you is a sight you couldn't have imagined a week ago. The tents of the newcomers and the old camp, pitched side by side, not forced closed, but close, like two pieces of cloth placed nearby, drifting together in the wind. You're assigned to fetch water for the newly shared cooking area. It's not far, but it takes you through what used to be the edge of camp, a place where no one lingered, where glances were once thick with caution. Today, as you pass through, you see an older woman weaving netting from dry grass. Beside her, a young woman is sewing the strap of a leather satchel for a man you've never seen before, likely a new arrival from yesterday's group. She looks up as you walk past, doesn't smile but nods. You nod back and realize the distance between this nod and the wary stares of just a few days ago is more than a few steps. It's a decision. As you pour water from your gourd into the large pot, a young man from the strangers group approaches. He looks awkward, with broad shoulders and gravel in his voice. The pot's boiling over, he says, pointing to the rising foam. You nod, rake aside the coals with a stick, and turn down the fire. I used to cook in my old camp too, he adds. Didn't taste good though. You chuckle. I'm not sure mine does either. You both stare into the pot, no more words. But something's thawing, like the first thin ice melting on a springtime lake. By midday, you're called to the main tent. No tension, just a meeting between representatives from both groups. You don't represent anyone, but the camp chief wants you there. Because you've been in the middle from the start, he says. Inside, the elder of the newcomers sits opposite your camp leader. No shouting, no accusations. They talk about rotating grazing rights, about how to share water from the deep well, about what to do if children fight. No oaths, no scrolls, just nods. Okay, agreed. We understand. After the meeting, you sit with the woman by the fire. She's boiling water with a few sprigs of herbs. The scent is soft, clean, and not overpowering. You tell her about the meeting. She doesn't react. Just pours the tea slowly, then says, "When people don't trust each other, tea is the easiest thing to share, because no one's afraid to lose anything. But once they start offering meat, rice, firewood, that's when they're truly living together." You ask, "So which stage are we in now?" She smiles faintly, tilting her head. "Probably past tea, not quite at rice." You nod, sip the tea slowly. That evening, you walk through the open space between the two rows of tents. Where once there was distance, now a few people are building a shared rack to dry meat. One tends the fire, another strings the rope. Children run in circles, as if all the tension had only ever belonged to the grown-ups. You linger there for a moment, then turn to leave. But before you reach your tent, you see a teenager from the newcomers group struggling to lift a sack of grain, too heavy for one person. You walk over, say nothing, and grab one handle. He looks at you panting, then says, "Thanks. If I dropped this, we'd have no lunch tomorrow." You reply softly, "Then don't drop it." You both laugh. That night, as you lie down on your woolen bed, you realize, for the first time in many nights, you're not lying there trying to predict what tomorrow will bring. You think, maybe tomorrow, the sun will shine, and somehow, that's enough. The next day begins with the sound of a knife being sharpened. Not a weapon, just a small knife used to peel radishes. But that sound, steady, soft like wind brushing through grass, is enough to make you feel at ease. You wake up a little later than usual. The tent is already empty. You sit up, shrug on your coat, neatly fold the slightly rumpled wool blanket, and step outside. The sun is gentle, clouds are sparse, and the wind comes from the east. Nothing unusual, and maybe that's why you're more alert than usual. On the steppe, the calmest days are often when something slowly rises beneath the surface. You're assigned to help prepare herbal poultices today. Not complex work, but it requires patience. The newcomer girl, her name is Narantsetseg, and you only just remembered it yesterday, is rinsing roots while you're crushing dried leaves in a stone bowl. "You're pounding too hard," she says. You glance up, a little flustered. She doesn't smile, but there's no scolding in her eyes either. She reaches out, takes the bowl, and demonstrates. You have to do it evenly. If not, the herbs won't break down properly. When you apply it to the skin, it'll feel hot in one place, cold in another. You watch her, then nod, mimicking her rhythm. At midday, you rest under a tree near the camp. The boy who once handed you a half-eaten biscuit is now swinging from a rope between two tent posts. One of his feet slips, but his hands hold firm. You quietly walk over and stand behind him, just in case. He glances down and grins mischievously. "I'm better now than the first time you saw me, right?" You smile and nod. "Now you're even better at scaring people." Both of you laugh. That afternoon, the camp elders gathered in a circle around a pile of firewood. They share old stories, no order, no clear beginning or end. Just fragments of memory falling like ash, picked up by others and spun into a new tale. You sit and listen, saying nothing. One tells of a year when snow fell in June. Another recalls being bitten on the ear by a horse after hiding sheep fat in his pocket. The woman beside you whispers, "Out here, Memories are kept through words. If you don't tell your story, you disappear first. You turn to look at her, then quietly wonder, if you left tomorrow, which story would you take with you? Before dinner, you and Narant head to the hillside behind camp to gather firewood. The sky darkens gradually. The sun sinks along the western rim, tinting the horizon with a pale gold mixed with smoke. She says, "Someone in my group used to live far beyond the desert, a place where the sand had no scent and the nights were cold as stone." You ask, why did they leave? She answers, not looking back. Because there was no one left to stay for. You say nothing. Not because you have nothing to say, but because sometimes silence is the kindest way to share in someone's grief. She hands you a small pouch tied with twine on the way back. Inside is a round, smooth stone, surprisingly warm despite the cold air. "My mother gave this to me when I left home," she says. "I've kept it ever since. Now I'm giving you half of it." You look at her, puzzled. "Half?" She smiles, soft as wind. "Maybe one day, if we're not in the same place anymore, and you see this stone, I'll know you once trusted me." You hold the stone without speaking, but inside something settles, like a pebble sinking quietly to the bottom of a stream. That night, you lie on a bed of dry grass, your hand gently wrapped around the little cloth pouch. Tomorrow may still be peaceful, or it may not. But now you've started to call this place by a word you hadn't dared use before. Home. The next morning, the wind changed direction. You didn't hear it at first. You felt something different in the air. The early scent of the earth was no longer sweet, but dry, cold and distant. When you stepped out of your tent, your breath was already turning to mist. Your fingertips tingled as they touched the saddle straps. A child ran past, face wrapped in layers of cloth. Everyone in the camp had added more layers, ears covered, necks wrapped. The season's first authentic cold had arrived, not howling or harsh, but silently rooting itself into sleeves, fingers, and every breath. You were assigned to rebuild the livestock fence. The wind from the night before had knocked out several wooden stakes. The leather ties had shrunk in the cold, stiffer now and harder to fasten than usual. Narant brought you a strip of cloth to wrap your hands. "So your skin doesn't crack," she said, placing it into your palm without another word. "Thanks," you said. She replied softly, "Winter comes fast here." Blink, and the snow's already falling. You looked up, no snow yet. But you believed her. By afternoon, the camp was stockpiling firewood, dry straw, and sheep fat. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew. If you weren't ready early, the cold wouldn't spare anyone. You helped the newcomers fix their tent doors. An older man from their group muttered, "At our old camp we got lazy. Thought if we moved slower, the weather would too." Turns out, he didn't finish the sentence, but you understood, and you kept hammering wooden pegs into the ground. That night, as you lit the fire, it was stubborn. Yesterday's dry wood had soaked up moisture. Smoke stung your eyes. You crouched low, blew gently, and tried again. As you fumbled, a hand appeared beside you, Narant offering a glowing coal held in wooden tongs. You placed it into the heart of the pile, and the fire caught. She said, "Sometimes you don't need to start over. You just need to keep one ember alive long enough." You nodded. The fire rose quickly, and warmth followed. That night, dinner was served earlier than usual. Meat porridge, flatbread, ginger tea. People sat closer together, children bundled up. Elders are seated by the fire. The camp chief gave a short announcement. "Starting tomorrow, we'll rotate night watch more often. Cold brings the wolves sooner." You weren't surprised, but still your chest tightened slightly. You had never faced wolves and only heard distant howls. But you knew, if there was one thing that could make Mongols abandon a camp in the dead of night, it was wolves. You were assigned the second night shift. Narant handed you a thick wool-lined cloth. "For the northern wind, it cuts like a blade." You looked at her and asked, "And you? Are you keeping a piece for yourself?" She paused for a beat. "My part's right here," she said. "You didn't ask for more. You wrapped the cloth around your shoulders, tightened the tie, and stepped into the wind. That night, as you walked along the edge of the camp, you heard a rustle in the grass. You stopped, torch raised. Nothing. Then the sound came again, closer, in the opposite direction. You turned, gripping the torch tightly, and from the dark, a small rabbit sprang out, darting past your boots and vanishing into the hay. You exhaled, smiling faintly, and continued. Not every night brought wolves, but every night brought something that made you ready. You stood rising above the camp, looking out to the horizon. No lights, no buildings, just a black plain and the faint, trembling glow of distant stars. But you knew. Someone out there was preparing, just like you. Someone was tending their fire and thinking about tomorrow. And for a moment, you didn't feel small anymore. The first great wind of the season arrived at midnight. You were on watch along the eastern edge of camp when the sky darkened, not from clouds, but from something heavier, invisible. Dry grass bent low, and tent walls rippled and snapped. No howling, no thunder, just a silent shift and a cold numbing your palms center. You moved quickly around the camp, checking latches and helping reinforce the windbreaks. When you returned to the observation hill, you found Narantsetseg already there, cloak snapping in the gusts, holding a bundle of dried grass woven into the shape of an X. For tying to the fence, she said, to scare the wolves. You took it. No jokes, no smile. Something in the air made you both go still and serious. As the wind grew stronger, the camp began to stir. No one called out. Each person knew what to do. Children were wrapped tightly and pushed toward the center of the tents. Stones were stacked at the base of the stoves. The horses were brought close to the main shelter. The elders sat in silence, eyes wide, mouths shut. You understood. This was no longer just a night watch. This was a night the entire camp would stay awake. While you were securing the back wind flap of the cooking tent, a howl split the air, long, sharp, and so cold it raised the hair on your arms. No one needed to say it. You knew that sound. Wolves, not one. A pack. You and 3 others rushed to lock the fences. Narantsetseg ran to you with a bundle of oil-soaked cloth, fuel for the torch. When you struck a flame, it roared to life, casting a red-orange glow across the space beyond the camp's edge. The first pair of eyes appeared not long after, far away, glowing like twin silver coins. Then another pair, and another. You couldn't count them, only knew they were watching, waiting. The camp chief stepped beside you. No big weapons, only a long staff wrapped in smoldering cloth. He nodded, walked forward a few paces, and raised the staff, drawing a circle. A signal. Not for the wolves, for the camp. Almost instantly, torches flared up along the fence line. A steady drumbeat began from the western tents. Not loud, not fast, but firm, like a heartbeat keeping the camp alive. You saw the wolves hesitate. A few backed off. Some advanced, then froze. There was no roar, no charge, just a standoff, firelight facing pale, motionless eyes. After a long moment, the pack began to retreat. Slowly, step by step, no cheers, no deep sighs. But you felt your heart slow, your grip on the torch relaxing. Narantsetseg came to stand beside you, her face streaked with ash, but her eyes clear. They weren't that hungry, she said. Next time, maybe they will be. You nodded, then both of you turned back toward camp. Near dawn, the wind softened. The grass began to rise again. The tent stopped flapping. People started boiling tea. A child wrapped in a blanket wandered around the ashes, picking up half-burnt sticks. You sat by the fire, hands outstretched. An older man beside you said quietly, "You know, most people think survival's a grand thing, but sometimes it's just staying up long enough for the wind to change." You didn't answer, but you knew. This night had changed something in you. Morning sunlight might come, but no one in camp would be the same as the day before. When you stepped out of the tent that morning, the sunlight had turned a deeper gold. The biting cold from the past few days had eased. A gentle crispness remained, as if the sky itself was exhaling in relief after a long, restless night. The camp was busy, but not hurried. There were quiet laughs, the rhythmic tapping of knives on cutting boards, and the warm scent of flatbread drifting on the breeze. You helped Narantsetseg wash her hands after she applied medicine to an elder who had slipped the day before. She glanced at you and smiled gently. You don't look lost like you did when you first arrived. You laughed, scratching your head. If I still looked lost, I'd probably be missing a few teeth by now. You both chuckled. That afternoon, the camp chief called you over. He handed you a small square of wool, stitched with dark thread. Nothing extravagant, just a soft cloth with slightly frayed edges. But you knew it wasn't just a gift. Keep it, he said, so you'll remember you were once part of this place. You held it in your hand. Something warm stirred in your chest, hard to name but unmistakable. You looked around. The tents, the kitchen smoke, the horses pawing at the dirt, people walking by with tasks in hand. Everything had become familiar. You had arrived here as a stranger. But today, you leave carrying a memory. Not grand, not glorious, just real. And sometimes that's the most precious thing one can take from any place. And if you're still here and listening, I want to thank you. Thank you for walking with me through this long night, across the vast Mongolian steppe, through bitter winds, the howls of wolves, and the quiet, steady gaze of people who were once strangers. Thank you for letting me tell you a story. Not just about the past, but about the timeless things we all seek. Connection, trust, and a place to call home, even if only for a moment. If this journey meant something, please click the like button to tell me you were here. And hit subscribe so we can find each other again on another night, with new stories, in distant lands you may have never set foot in, but where your mind is always free to wander. And if you have a few seconds, leave a comment below. Where are you listening from? What time is it? Are you lying in bed on your sofa or wearing headphones on your evening bus ride home? I always smile when I see who's been keeping me company. Thank you. Sleep well.